The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, welcome everybody. It's that time again. We're going to be doing another MadCap software webinar. Mike Hamilton here. I'm going to be the kind of host and master of ceremonies. And it's going to be my pleasure to introduce a longtime friend and partner of MadCap Software, Thomas Bro-Rasmussen. I can't even remember when we met. Oh my gosh, goes way back. But I've known Thomas for many a year. Just an absolute Flare expert. And the subject he will be discussing today is structured publishing, some advanced conversion of Excel spreadsheet data to MadCap Flare content. And I have to admit, I don't want to give away his thunder, but he's given me a bit of a pre-show, and it's pretty amazing. So we're in for a treat. However, before we start, a couple of announcements. If you aren't familiar with our webinars, this will be recorded. It will be posted on our website probably by tomorrow. So just by attending, you will be receiving an email with a link to that recording once it's live. And of course, you can share that recording with your colleagues, anybody else. Also, if you've been yelling at your computer trying to get our attention, my apologies, we can't hear you. And that's really to protect your privacy. So you should be able to see and hear the presentation, but nobody here can hear or see anything happening on your end. Does that mean you can't ask questions? Not at all. If you look at the webinar interface, there is a tab that says questions on it. If you open that tab, there is a live question and answer panel. You can type any of your questions in at any time. Now, I will be collecting those questions, and then we will, time permitting at the end, we will get to as many of those as possible. But with all of that, thank you everybody for attending. I'm going to turn it over to Thomas Bro-Rasmussen so that he can share his findings.
Thanks, Mike. We met in Derby in England like 16 years ago. And I've been with Flare since, at least using the product. Now I have the pleasure of showing something which I've been thinking about since we met in Derby. I had been doing that kind of automated publishing since 1989 under my slogan called "Do It Smarter," basically because I'm pretty lazy. So if I can get something like a tool or machine to do it for me, I would prefer that. The top line says I'm an expert trainer and developer and all sorts of things, which of course is added over 30 plus years in the business. In this context today, I have advised quite a few clients of how to go from a manual production to automated production. I have developed together with these clients and other people different solutions with different tasks and so on. Some of these have been more or less, some fully, and some, part as a consultant for IKEA, those guys. TUI is a travel agency, American Boy Scouts. They needed to automate something like 1.5 million daily something. Microsoft as well, yes. Autometrics, I used to work for these guys for 15 years. Struer is a Danish company, Maersk. You'll see those a bit later of some of the stuff. And DSB, which is the Danish railroads. Just some of them. Right. So there are two terms that are being sort of floating around in the business. Something is called database publishing and something is called structured publishing. I guess you could say that they basically do the same thing. They publish from some sort of a data source, being a database or being in Excel, which is what we have undergone this time. And you put these data somehow into a design program, and maybe you have a publishing engine, and out comes some PDF and some web output. That's the very simple way of doing it. You can see the Flare go both places. So in Flare, we have both the design program and the publishing engine in one, which is a huge advantage seen from at least my point of view and for anybody else's point of view. And since you have Flare on your computer, if you have it, you don't need to basically go out and ask for too much help if you know how to do these things. But this is how it normally works. But the whole aim of it is actually to go from the database through the infamous one-button convert, and things are happening. Something, of course, is happening in the background. When do you need automation? You need to look at your daily work and find out and try to analyze what you're doing. And these are just some of the things that you should be looking for if you have a very large amount of data and also a very large amount of work. If you have a large amount of repetitive, boring tasks, and I mean boring tasks, really, you get fed up with it. So manually copy paste, that's another hint that you should be doing something. When your source is generally outside Flare, and if this source is repeatedly updated outside, because when that happens, you have to get these things into Flare somehow. You know, you can do a manual copy or paste, but why bother if there is a different solution, which I'm going to show. The source is often structured. I use the word often quite deliberately because it doesn't have to be. There is something called an unstructured database as well as databases are structured. Excel and XML, of course, is structured down to the last line. But it is a very good idea if it is structured. If it is a mess, you don't get anything out of it anyway. And also, which is kind of a funny one, is if you don't, as a company, have a real overview of your expenses and the resources involved in the present process of getting something very nice looking out of your data, which I will show why that is, or you can at least depict it out of the next slide. And then the amount of review processes, if they start to exceed a certain number and people, they start to not believe in each other or ask questions, did you do it? No, I didn't. Can I please correct? I want to. All that are signs that an automation is needed. Basically taking all of these points down to one, if it's possible. The normal process in getting something from a data creation scenario down to the final output would have these. It could be anything else, but this is how I've chosen to picture it. So you've got some review cycles at your data source. You've got some manual data transfer. It can be anything. You can take from Excel maybe and save it as a Word file, or you can save it as some CSV file, and then manually maybe something copy paste. These things happen. Then you have a design phase, which happens in Flare, of course, and in that you will usually get some review cycles as well, and possibly manual changes as well. And then the final output, which again always undergoes a certain amount of review cycles. When doing these things, you will always get somebody finding an error, and they will report back a step. And they report back to the design phase because in the final output, they think that the error occurred at the design phase, or maybe you have to go back to the data transfer phase, or maybe even back to the data creation phase. And then you do the whole thing over again because you found an error. That is not productive. It is counterproductive without a shadow of a doubt. So a better way, a smarter way, is basically to use a lot of review cycles, all the data verification at the data source. Have a data transfer, an automatic one. You have to trust your data, and you have to trust the formatting and the placeholders done in Flare. So the only thing you basically have to do is look at the final output. And if there are any errors at all, not if, when there are, because we're humans, we do typos, then you basically go back to the data creation phase in your data source and redo the whole thing. That is the best way to do it. So the way Flare does it, because Flare has an excellent Excel import facility or function, it can take any Excel file and import it, and then something has to be done afterwards. But you can choose between converting your Excel to topics or snippets. You can choose where to place the Excel, the final result. You can deal something or control what you do with hidden rows and such. And maybe if you want to, you've got some equations, you can convert that into MathML. But no matter, and there are a few more things, of course. But nevertheless, there is a bit of post-import work to be done afterwards. And I'll show you those in a short while. So we created something we call add Flare. Add is Latin for meaning to. So this is something that goes to Flare. That's how the add comes in. We can now, and I'm going to show you, transform any kind of content and create p tags, band classes, divs, whatever the CSS supports. We create snippet from cell contents. We can attach table styles to selectively and dynamically to different portions of the same worksheet. we create all the needed files for final Flare product or output. So target files, TOC files, topics and snippets, and so on. And we also control variable and variable content, and also conditions being populated or being put into the target file if needed. And also, sort of a small one, the last one says if you've got 2 lines in Excel, we can choose whether these are being line breaks or if they're actually coming across as 2 different paragraphs within the same cell. And a lot more which is actually being done right now. But this is what I'm going to show today. So a comparison in between the 2 different methods, the Flare import and the add Flare, is that on the left-hand side, you have the Excel sheet. There are 2 visibly different sections, top and bottom data sheets they are. And the Flare import will take about 60 seconds. And after that, you have to style it. You have to put a target on it, a TOC and conditions and snippets and images and a bit more. Plus, of course, attach a page layout either in the target or in the TOC, depending on what you want. In add Flare, for the exactly same thing you are looking at right now, it takes 2 seconds and all is done. That is a huge difference. So to the seeing part, to the viewing part, let's have a look. See if I can browse around. This is how it looks. This is add Flare. It has 2 very simple areas. First of all, we can select the Flare project. It has been pre-selected, so I don't lose myself on my machine trying to find it. I have found it. And then I can add Excel files, as many as I want. And once that's done, I have one button down there that says convert to Flare. That is all I do. Let me open up the Flare project from within the interface. And let me go back to the interface and open up the Excel file. So you can see them, that they're both there. Let's see if here we go. So this is the Excel file. The top part has been defined to be the variable content that goes into the target file. Then we have a table style. It actually tells me which style I'm going to use. I've written that in there. And then all that is just data coming in there. And I've left a few empty spots in here for me to write something. So you can see this is for real. So I'm going to write demo for real of add Flare. Enter. That's all I do. Control S. I'm done. Go back to the interface and click the convert button. And it is now done. And I will open up the Flare project. And in the Flare project, you will now see that it has created a target file. It has created a TOC file. It's right there. And in the Content Explorer, you will see that it has a topic file and a number of snippets. I'll come back to those so you can see how they are being converted from Excel into Flare. So I'm going to open up this topic file. And of course, I need to show you that it is for real. So somewhere down there, I have written demo for real of MadCap. And I need to zoom in a bit. Pardon me. Go. That's it. There we are. Demo for real of add Flare. Now, imagine a situation where somebody says, I would like to have a few changes. I would like this demo for real of add Flare because it has to be used thousands of times to be a snippet. If I have to do this outside of the add Flare environment, I have to sort of, get it in there, write it, create the snippet in Flare and so on. It's okay for just one of them, but what if I have 100 of these? It takes time and that's it. And I don't have the time for it. So if I go back now to the Flare file, or to the Excel file, sorry, it's right there, and I will do something here. I'll just underline the demo for real of MadCap Flare, save the file, and I will convert again. So I'm going from almost the output, found the error inside of Flare, back, and if I go now to Flare, which would be the one there, Flare is now working in the background. Something happened, I can see. And if I go down to down there, it is now a snippet. Here we are. I can open it up. So you can see it is actually a snippet. So that's how it is. This is how easy it is. Caution is there. Okay, this doesn't look very nice. So yeah, this is okay. So if I just scroll down a bit, here's another table. It's coming in, and it looks quite funny right now. It seems like I need to go and change my medium so you can see how that. Oh, here we go. There's a note. I want to show you that one. We have a bullet somewhere. Here we are, several bullets. There is a simple font, which is fully supported for all characters in the simple font, because this happens to be a data sheet. So these things do appear. And if I go back to the Excel sheet now, here we are, I can go down and find the word note. And this is something that we chose, that if you have the word note, colon, it will turn into a div with the word caution and also a blue outline. So let me take and do this for the optional and write the word caution, colon, like that, save it, go back to add flare and do another convert to flare. I like the convert part because it's fast. I don't have to bother too much except just hit the convert button. Let's have a look in Flare, see how that looks now. Flare works in the background. So I'm looking for something called caution now. Coming down there somewhere. Ah, there it is. This is how caution is defined there, but it's still a div. I've got the div out there. These are just different layouts that we have chosen for functionality. And the top one there, if I go and see, I would like to see the, whoops, top there. There's something yellow, meaning that if we have a color, we have chosen the blue color, it turns into one condition, which is now called data sheet only for the data sheet, meaning that if this content actually is also part of a user guide, it doesn't necessarily have to be shown. And that's how it's done. And in this Excel sheet, here we are. You can see that all the way up there. If I zoom really in, you can see that the blue text, and those blue text will actually become a condition. That's how we define this. There's a whole much more than what you just see right out of there. An asterisk like this one here turns into a bullet, and that's it. And the blue row is a condition as well. So if I go to my flare and scroll down, there should be a whole row somewhere down there where it is. No, that didn't work. So that's not the right color. That's my fault. That happens in a demo. So let me go and show something else. If I go in and say, right, let's just convert a few more. So I'm going to add a few more and just leave it to the machine to do the conversion. Let's see how fast it takes. Before that, there are 5 Excel files. We know for a fact that each of these Excel files usually were done from Excel to InDesign. Now they're Excel to Flare. And before we automated the stuff, it took between 2 and 3 hours for a fully functional output that really worked. So I will now convert these into Flare, and let's see how fast that is. And it's not too bad. Mind you, we are talking something like 10 hours, cut down to maybe a minute and a half. It's going 20, 30, 40, and we're done. It might pop up with errors. I think there are errors right now. We have a built-in error saying, well, you did something wrong, or there's a variable not present, and there's a path it can't find. And I found out when demoing for Mike just before the session that the path it can't find is the images part. But yeah, well, that's what happens. Right, let's go into Flare now. And if I go into the organizer, you can now see that we have, yeah, those are the ones that are, these 4 are okay. Let me just take number 20 and build it. And let's see if it builds right away or it pops up with a build failed. It's always funny. Ah, yeah, the build failed. The build fail has got nothing to do with Flare. So now you can rest. It is a problem with Acrobat that doesn't free resources on the folder name of the output. And it's a tricky one and it's an annoying one, but it is an Acrobat thing. If you have a big Acrobat Pro DC cloud thing. Let's just see how it builds and how it looks. Here we go. This is how it looks. This is the final output, which has been approved by marketing, which is important. So the next message right now is really important. With the latest version of Flare, my take is that it is comparable to the output graphically and especially typographically of Adobe InDesign. It wasn't before, it is now, which is a huge advantage seen from publications like this, which usually lie in marketing departments, because it has to look nice. It's part of the publishing database or structured publishing is the final output has to look nice, otherwise there's no point in doing it. So this is how it looks. Right. Anything else? Yeah, well, it says build after conversion down here again and open after building. All demos, they fail somehow. I've been doing it for, I don't know, months and weeks, whatever, but it has always worked. But not now. But what happens is, if it works, and I didn't have time to find out why, I don't have to do anything. I don't even have to open Flare. All I have to do is say build after conversion and open after building, and I have got my PDF files done without having Flare open at all. It is quite nice that I need that. Right, okay. So, you know what? That's basically what the product does. The client that we developed this one for actually wanted a few other things, like if there are empty cells, they don't want an empty cell. They want an in dash instead of that. So when you look into the actual find out, I've got a, here we go. Please close that one. And if I go to the product and I view this one again, you will see that there are in dashes for empty cells. It looks nicer, so we put it in there. Even though it wasn't in the Excel file, we can do these things. It's development for you. Somebody, this guy called William, my developer, and he does these things, and he does it pretty well. Right, let me go back to the actual demo of the PowerPoint. Here we go. So what you just witnessed, some of it, anyway, the auto build didn't work, my fault, sorry about that, was that we support table style, full support of CSS, variables, conditions were in there as well, control file names, we can create snippets, special implementations like the one with the dash. There are also some other ones that were hidden in there, and we can use any character possible. The one thing you cannot use in that, and I'll just show you that, because people using Excel, if they want a simple font, they would most likely and often do what I'm doing now. I'm just any cell in any Excel sheet. You would insert, and then you would use this symbol over here on the right-hand side. Never do that, because that never gives a font. It gives something which doesn't transform or transfers from Excel to anything else. It's just an Excel thing. You need to know what the font is. You need to know that if you have a W like that, and take that this has to be a simple font, this is the way you have to do it. I know when I met Mike the first time, he talked about it's fantastic to convert things from Excel and FrameMaker and back and forth in between Flare, and that was one of the things he showed that didn't work, because Excel was playing in the background and doing its stuff, and it's not very nice that we do these things, but this is how Microsoft works. Right, back to this one here. Some numbers. These are real numbers from this client that we have worked with on the Add Flare version 1. They had about 100 Excel files at the time, and they did calculate together with us themselves. I had a few other Flare experts in on it to say how long time do we think it takes to convert the Excel files, and we estimated between 300 to 400 hours first time. After that, every single year there's 100 hours per year with subsequent updates of the Excel files in the old-fashioned way, either going to Flare or going to InDesign. Right now, with those 100 files, last time I checked, it took 1 minute and 37 seconds for exactly the same. And that's like every time we click on the convert button. I think it's quite cool, and I'm quite happy with it, because that is part of the automated publishing cycle and the way of working. Right, how to go about this? Well, if you are in a situation where you might want to do things that you think you may want to, you have to sort of assess, what am I doing right now? It is very intuitive to do things manually. You can do it out of the box from Flare. There are many review cycle and all these things, like create the Flare content itself. It's labor intensive. It's a lot, and it's error prone. We are only humans, and possibly there are only more than one source to your content. All these have to be added up and assessed, evaluated, and you end up with some number. And then you have to compare that number to what the future might bring you. Yes, it is an investment, the second bullet, but that has to be balanced against the now situation. It will be automated. It is fairly easy to scale once you start up with it. There is a one source. It doesn't have to be one source. It can be several sources. If you want to, you can have Excel as one source and a database as another source, or XML as a third source, and still get a pretty good result out of it. And they don't even have to be related or indexed against each other. It has a very long-term value. There's a huge time savings. And the fact you don't need to open Flare, I'm going to come to that, really soon in my presentation, but it's actually quite important. The quality is extremely high because it is very consistent when you compare the data structure against the final output. Then there is a quick turnaround. So if people come up with changes, change them in Excel, click the convert button, and you are running. What we found is that the sort of troublesome step in all this is actually the people now dealing with the Excel file. Who has the authority, who has the responsibility, who is the upper pay grade when we make a joke of it. And then these people in this company, they need to sort of sort out in between themselves who has the responsibility for the Excel file, because everybody suddenly wants to chip in, and that of course makes life a bit challenging at times. Very quick delivery for output, and it's very easy to use. Remember, it happens behind the scene. There's only one button to use. And since it is Flare, since it is within this multilingual, it is so much easier if you do this stuff. What we do with this is it's a tailor-made solution. There is no two identical tasks. Even within this company, there are 3 different types of Excel files. So there are 3 different types of development within AdFlare in order for this to happen. The requirement is it has to look like this. This is what the marketing and the art director said. This is how it has to look. Can Flare do it? Yes, Flare can do it. Can we automate it? And yes, we can do that. But it does require a bit more. And to the next client, I hope there will be a next client, of course, but to you, if you have something else, it is different. There's, of course, a bunch of libraries in our development saying, yeah, we can convert and we can easily find a table style sheet. But there will be special development no matter what in any task ahead. It is impossible not to. So we analyze the situation in client and from a range of different parameters. Now, some examples of where this can be used. You probably don't know it's called a UDI label, but UDI labels, you find them on machinery, you find them on packages, and they typically look like this. I have a better one here. This is the kind of stuff you will find them in. There's a waste paper basket, that's what they call them in the US. It's a bin, or it's called a WE symbol. And the thing, what I'm doing here is I'm saying, well, the WE symbol is used in the user guide, but it's also used on the label. So in a Flare environment, this is quite cool because we can use the same image twice, and it goes with the rest of what you have. All these will typically be defined in a regulatory part of your user guide, but they are also mandatory on more or less any UDI labels you have ever met and seen. And here are 3 other different ones. There are different label sizes. They're all ordinary labels, sticky on the back side. You tear them off and you put them on the machine. It is out of Flare's comfort zone. I think we all think that Flare is a fantastic tool to do user manuals and help files in PDF or online output. But what you're looking at right now is actually something that can be done with Flare as well. And since there's a very detailed part of things like this, like the blue and the top 2, there's a sterile R and a warning and an RX only, and there's some CE logo. They are apparently only on one type of label, not on the other type of label. We still have a repository inside an Excel file, but a condition says it doesn't need to be on the top right-hand one. And on the green ones, what we can do here is that in an InDesign scenario, because that's what you usually find these kind of UDI labels, because they look nice, is that the umbrella always have a fixed space because that's where they put them. But in a Flare scenario, we just take and say, well, it doesn't really matter. We will make sure it goes within the flow of icons and text. So if it is conditioned out with an exclude, we will just move it a bit to the left. So the thermometer on the right-hand side is out, excluded, and it just moves it to a bit to the left. It's all dynamic. And the different sizes, of course, of the umbrellas and the icons is a media section in the CSS file. It's automatic. We pick up the media section in Flare to make sure we do the right thing. And the bottom right-hand corner hasn't got anything. I would like to show you something, though. Let me just go and show you something here. I'm going to open up, there we go, 2 PDF files created like this. I'm not going to show you the actual conversion because it did do something I didn't like. So this is the Excel file that creates these. Every single row is a label. Every single row contains enough information to actually produce labels. The green colors are only for my benefit, my eyes. So if it's green, it's yes. If it's no, it's red. But it contains all the needed information. And if I go to the final output, they look like this, maybe. This is all automatic. I don't touch it at all. I've been part of UDI label productions for ages, and it is always a hassle, a challenge. A lot of people saying, yes, but can't we, and won't we, and what happens if, and label sizes and all that. That doesn't really matter. The label size is part of the Excel sheet, so this label is completely different with the same content, just placed completely different places, because the machine has a size that goes well with that type of format. So it is actually more or less the same, but just different positions on it. So UDI labels, I think, is an excellent way of using Flare for something out of a not user guide or quick guide scenario. There are some more of them. On the left, the fiscal reports are quite fun. Well, I think they're quite fun. I know from companies like Maersk in the bottom right-hand corner that the only thing they really hate are the tables and the fiscal reports, because they update like every 5 minutes, and every 10 minutes they want a proof in a PDF file that goes around the entire company, and they're always late, or they always hire in a whole bunch of extra hands to help them out when deadline is near. We don't have to. What we can do on the right-hand side is that the text on the right-hand side in the columns is actually a text part from an unstructured database, which is typically something you find in unstructured databases. On the left-hand side, you basically have a small Excel file, or it could be an Excel file. And again, click on a button, and that one is updated. Both the text and the table and the graph are updated. On the left-hand side, there are 2 different Excel files. Actually, I found out that it's not Excel, both of them. One, the top one is actually from a database, and the bottom one is from an Excel file. So this company had 2 different ways of wanting the different data sources, but it had to look the same. This is an absolutely easy job to do manually in Flare, but it takes a long time to update it because these figures, they update non-stop the closer you get to a fiscal report date. Right, typical tools catalogs, lots of structures on those. We did in the old days in FrameMaker, but I wouldn't do that anymore, of course, not in this environment, and I would probably use Flare anyway today when I know what Flare can do and FrameMaker can't. Yeah, it's just a tool, and there's a lot of structure when you look at it. Basically, it's just a matter of having a bunch of frames inside a page layout, and each of these frames must contain a certain amount of data in a very structured way, and the rest is a combination of CSS and whatever happens in the Excel file, and we click on a button, and this is what happens, including the images. On the right-hand side, we have 3 different sections inside of an ordinary user guide, and they are actually part of the flow. So if the text on the top left-hand side takes up too much space, it will basically push the small section of the table further down until it hits the bottom one, and that will go to the next page. That, of course, is a problem, but it's also nice because I know where to find it, i.e. on the next page, and not like, ooh, it's gone, there's a red plus, and what do I do with that? Here we go. Believe it or not, travel catalogs. That's why I started my automated career doing travel catalogs. So each of these small squares or rectangles are actually just content from some kind of a data source being put into Flare, and there's no problem using this, creating things like you have in front of you in Flare, even probably most people will say, well, this is a typical InDesign job, which it is, but Flare can do it as well. And it is much easier to do it in Flare because Flare has this open structure of all being XML files, whereas putting XML into InDesign is quite a task. The XML is not that neat, even though it can be done. Top right-hand corner, again, you have it. Lots of structure. When you start analyzing the stuff, can we really do it? Yes, we can. And it's soon Christmas, so why not? I just took this one out of the locker. And well, yeah, they probably don't exist anymore, but you know, the obvious one is always the yellow or the white pages. So on a broader perspective, and this slide is actually one of the more important ones in the entire presentation. One, of course, being Add Flare itself with a convert button, but we are no more. Flare is no more restricted to a normal documentation workflow. We do not have to, as Flare users, go out and find the technical documentation department and say you need Flare. We can go to any department that have any task as long as it adheres to the small thumbnail on the right-hand side saying the sign that this is worth it, that this is what we're looking for. So if I go into a marketing department and have these things, they can basically acquire Flare, make sure things work, never open Flare at all, except have a convert button and get the final result out of it. So we're opening up with an approach like this to any department in any company, wherever it might be. That certainly gets Flare into situations where you would never have thought of it. At least that's what I see it. So I call it is being used out of its comfort zone. But again, you know, doesn't really a comfort zone. It's just some documentation. So it really is important to realize that this opens up to a wide range of publications and publishing using Flare as nothing but an absolutely excellent print and design engine. We push data in and we just wait for the results. It can take longer than a couple of seconds, of course, depending on the complexity. I'm almost done, believe me. It wasn't that big. So what we do is in TBRO is that we develop tools and solutions. This is a solution that will work across your Flare projects. Even though the department hasn't got Flare yet, I will try to convince them that they need Flare, but not opening it, not using it, not designing in it. Somebody else can do that. And that's what we basically do. And if you want to get hold of me, that is the one I have right there. And this, I guess, is where I leave it up to Mike. Well, this is a pretty fast pace, but when I did the demo, just before you get in, Mike, when we did the demo for the company, once we developed the stuff, they had set off 2 hours for a demo, and like, I don't know, a couple of minutes in, they said, okay, we're good. We don't have to see it again because they saw the convert button, it worked, and that was it. So those 2 hours turned down to a quarter of an hour of a meeting, and then a cup of tea, and that was it. So it is not much to show, but the impact of it is enormous. So, are there any questions, any comments? Or Mike, do you want to take over on this one here?
Well, just a real quick thank you to everybody for attending before we do the questions. So Thomas has put up the official kind of marketing slide here just for attending this webinar. If you are interested in purchasing some licenses, you're going to be entitled to some discounts just for attending this. You don't have to have a coupon code or anything. Just mention that you attended the Thomas Bro-Rasmussen webinar, and then you will be entitled to this discount rate on the MadCap Central licenses. All right, that's it for the commercial side. Now back to the Q&A part.
Before we come to the Q&A part, Mike,
Sure.
just a fun one, but it's basically to do with my name, because you are pretty much as bad as anybody else not being Danish and pronouncing my surname. So a future friend of ours called Tony Self in Australia, he gave up during one of my Mad World presentations way back and said, he's called TBRO. So in the Flare environment and in the society, I'm called TBRO. So, you know, leave it to the surname for me to pronounce in other Danes. So
Okay.
that's quite okay for me. So yeah.
All right. My apologies.
Yeah. You don't have to. It's quite okay.
Unfortunately, I'm one of these monolingual Americans.
Yeah.
Now, There was one question, and I don't believe it's related to the presentation, but it will give you an opportunity to speak to something else that I know that you have worked hard on. And somebody, Craig, has asked, when you were demonstrating inside of Flare, they were noticing a bunch of extra menu items in your copy of Flare that they haven't seen before. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, of course I will. It's a good friend of mine called, hang on, Matthias Sander. Here we are, and it's called Kaizen. So look up Kaizen Plugin, and he has a bunch of free plugins. And yeah, basically we all use them. We should use them. They're quite cool. They're pretty good. These are the ones up there. I guess this is what the question was all about.
Yes, the clean up
that's really cool one. Yeah, there's some cool ones. Yeah. You go look them up. Kaizen Plugin. I think it's called it's improvementsoft.com, I think. Yeah, he does a good job. Absolutely. Any questions on what I did?
So far, not yet. But now that it is officially question and answer time, I would encourage anybody, if you would like to ask a question, go ahead and jump into that question and answer panel. We do see it live, and we will be happy to entertain questions.
Yeah, and I'm demoing live now. I'm going to try something else, which is what you do when you do demos. It's kind of let's try it out and see what happens. It can only fail. Here we go. I'm going to add an Excel file. Yep, here we go. And any questions coming in? URL to read. What are the costs? I have no idea what the costs are because it is individual from task to task. If you remember the slide where it says how long time it took to convert, so you have to sort of balance in between, do we want to use 100 hours of company time or consultancy time every year, or 400 hours to convert the first time, against the development cost, which is a fraction of it. That I can promise. It is absolutely not that expensive compared to a 400 or 500 hours times whatever you have. That is for sure.
Well, I believe they're asking, is the Flare application you've been demonstrating, is that available? Or are you just showing this as kind of a proof of concept that somebody else could do?
Well, in a certain way it is, because the interface looks like this. Behind the interface is development, which is individual for every single client, for every single setup of an Excel file. There's no way I can depict or imagine how the next Excel file will look. So it will be a discussion in between me and a client saying, all right, what is it you want to achieve? The final output, where's your data source? How are your present workflows? What is it you want to sort of, how do you want to do the daily basis? This is interface for one client. It might look completely, it probably will look completely different to the next client. I'm quite sure it will, because things are different. If you remember the different slides of the, for instance, the UDI labels, that is completely different, everything. But what is common in between them all is the fact that they have, that the conversion from the structure of an Excel file creates a table which we can easily attach a table style sheet to. That's the important part. That is already, that has been developed for any kind of stuff. But I have no idea what the naming of the CSS properties are. This one was called P bullet and it was called div something. Another client might have something different, so we have to do things differently. We have been working on a sort of a live link in between the interface from Excel into a Flare project, but we gave up. We simply gave up because it is not feasible to sort of foresee what has user X used for names in the CSS and so on. So it is an analysis from task to task. There is no way I can do it otherwise.
So if somebody was very interested in this, then their best thing they could do would just be to reach out to you, and it would be a discussion to a quote at that point.
Exactly.
Excellent.
I guess we have a few we're working with right now, and they all have one commonality, is that it starts in the marketing department for whatever reason, but that's where it starts. It starts with something that looks extremely nice, it has to look nice because it has to be part of maybe a physical report, and they have to look nice, period. So how do you do these things? Then you sort of reverse engineer your way into Flare, make sure it works in Flare, and then I call in my developer and say, this is how it looks in Flare, this is how it has to look, what do we do? How do we do it for this one? Let me see what I actually did in this one here. All right, let me just go and, I just did a different one in the background. Let's see what this one builds so you can see this one as well. There's a question called recently created, I can't read it by SME. Somebody asked the question, I can see it says recently created by a SME. Can the person who asked that elaborate a bit? Can you see that, Mike?
I can't. I believe what he's getting.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you open this one up so you can see more? Here we go. Maybe like this. Okay. Let's see. URL. Here goes. There's no rapid development context. No. Well, that's Craig asking. Development takes the time development takes. The development of this one took about a month. That's what you see right now. The next one, if it's similar, comparable in an Excel file, will of course take shorter because we've already done some of the stuff. Yeah. I'm just trying to rebuild down here, see if I can make it work. Yeah, now Adobe is playing tricks on me.
It locked up the resources.
Yeah. It happens all the time when you have to use Acrobat Pro. This happens all the time. So, oh, here we go. That was the one I want to show you. Let me just go with this one here and go with this one here. Right. So this is just a different one, and you can see there are images in there. So, and I'll show you the Excel sheet so you can see how it looks. This is a very small one, and let me show you the Excel sheet. And again, what we did was we said that was it the TBRO. So I will open it from the interface. It's opening, and here you go. So the way we did this was we said, well, since an image inserted in Excel doesn't really have a link, Excel has no idea there is an image in there, somehow, even though you can see it. So we said, well, all you have to do is put in the image path and then write the name of the file, and that's all we need to do. The rest is being taken care of. So there's an image tag from the CSS attached to it. So no matter how big or different these images on the left-hand side are, we know for a fact that they will be the same in the final output over here on your left-hand side. Yeah. Have we got more questions? Yep, good. Next to menu items, got that. URL to read about this application. There is no URL. The only is you've got my email. That was Craig. And please get in contact. We can take a talk about it. That's all I can say. As I said in one of my slides, this is a solution. It's not an app. We would like it to be an app, but I did develop apps like that way back. And it's too much work, and the start cost is over the moon if it has to take care of every single thinkable corner and task and requirement. So we do it on a one-by-one basis. Yep. Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, it looks like Craig has one more.
Yeah, I've got one more here. TBRO crafts both the spreadsheet and the customized app based on a target I present. You're not quite sure I understand the question.
I think Craig has it a little bit backwards there.
Could be.
I believe he would present, here's what the spreadsheet looks like as defined by manufacturing. Here's the mock-up marketing wants. Then TBRO would customize the Add Flare app based on input A and output B. How do we establish the Flare components and automation in between? If I understood the presentation, that was my understanding.
Yeah. Well, if I go back to a slide, I can actually explain that, but on a generic term. Here we go, and if I do this one, and that one, and go to home. That one there. The way you do automated publishing, structured publishing, no matter what, it's nothing to do with Flare. It's the same if you do it in, well, take a letter merge, for instance, which is also kind of a structured or database publishing. You need a container, you need a placeholder for your content. That has to be defined in the design program. Otherwise, you can't do anything. And in Flare, what we define is pre any kind of publishing or any kind of pushing or importing of data from the data source, we need to make sure that Flare can do it manually. So we have an entire setup of a target and a TOC and TOCs and style sheets and page layout or master pages if the output is for web. That has to be in place, but with no data. The next step is to make sure that the data from the data source are being mapped into this placeholder system. So it's a kind of reverse engineering. If you can do it manually, we can do it automatically. That's how it all happens. I've done this, I've done these UDI labels for a couple of years now in Flare. I even demonstrated that in Dublin when we had MadWorld there. But I've done it for InDesign in the past and also for FrameMaker. And it is the same kind of setup every single time. The hard part is to understand the structure of what your data should look like and how you reverse engineering. That's the hard part. What often happens is that people, they say, can we also? And can we also sentence is the same as introducing an exception. And I hate exceptions. I don't want them if I can avoid them. We do have exceptions in our tool. I haven't shown you that. Is that the snippets that we create, we do allow the user to enter information inside each snippet manually in Flare for different purposes. And it makes sense for this client to do this. It's actually quite ingenious that they do it. It costs, it puts down their translation cost quite a bit by doing it, whatever the function is, but they can put extra information in the snippet, even though that information is not in the Excel file. And that we can do. That is an exception, but it is an exception which is repeated over and over again. So then suddenly the exception becomes a rule instead. But these exceptions, like can we do it because the sun shines? Never happening in a publishing world, never. And nobody can afford it because it takes too long time to develop. Yeah. Was that answer enough, do you think?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A panel.
Look, TBRO. Well, the TBRO spreadsheet. Well, this is just any spreadsheet. This was the spreadsheet that came out of the marketing department because this is what they had. They used to take the data from the spreadsheet that you've seen, all of you, and copy paste it into InDesign. That's how they worked, and this is how most people work, even in InDesign. Yeah, it can be done smarter even in InDesign, but often people don't do it. And yeah, that's it. So this is not a TBRO spreadsheet. This is a client spreadsheet. And I've hidden the client name in that. The original spreadsheet was not structured. We had to do that. We had to create an Excel template, which creates the structure needed for us to do these things. All righty. Yeah. I'm good on this side. I hope wherever you are, whoever you are, that you have at least got a bit of information, that you might sort of go out and visit your departments wherever you are and look at the kind of production and ask them if anybody is annoyed by the way things are being done at the moment. My sentence saying repetitive, boring tasks, if they have them, talk about it, and maybe you can return back to me. I can help you out and say it might be a possibility. It might not. You never know. But it is probably a good idea to ask rather than just leave it as they have been doing the last 20 years or more. So stay safe, and we'll see you around somewhere. MadWorld, preferably, possibly next year in June. Isn't it in June? Yeah.
Yes.
It's in June. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be there presenting. So that's it for me.
All right, so I guess we will officially close.
Yep.
Thank you so much, TBRO, for sharing your knowledge. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Again, watch your email once we post this live, and that typically happens within 24 hours. You should all be receiving an email with the link. Thank you so much, everybody. Everybody have a great rest of your day and an even better rest of your week. Cheers, everybody.